What's up, everybody? KleverKrok back for week 6 of the GTA. And this week, we've got another good set of matches. Some are, or at least seem, a bit one-sided, whereas other ones seem pretty close. But overall, again, just very consistent in the level of play, as it has been increasing. And I feel like everybody's demonstrated, especially this week, that they're learning how to use their teams more effectively now that it's more of the middle of the season and not so early on anymore. So we'll go ahead and jump into it. This week we won't have any guest, I was going to say speakers, but analysts. But next week we will hopefully have somebody back as well. So we'll go ahead and jump into things. And this first match is the match between the Minnesota Mucks and the Maple Grove Gengars. So on the Muck side, I really like the, I almost said Krogunk, Toxicroak. Really like Volcarona, which the Mucks have shown both this season and last season that it can use really well. The thing is just terrifying. And I also like the Porygon 2 here as well. Because the only thing that can, really resist most of its attacks is Kabutops. So we'll go ahead and jump into it, and I like the lead here. At first, when I was watching this, I was expecting some toxic spikes or something, but obviously with Nidoking still around, he made the right decision of leading with it. He went for the Giga Drain, which was still a safe play, and then he was able to get rid of the Nidoking. Now here, the weird thing is he stayed in and let the Roserade go down, I guess just fearing the knockoff. And he didn't, so right there, he didn't want that to happen too early, I guess. But it was Rocky Helmet, so I would have just switched in and saved the Roserade, honestly. And, he still would have been immune to the Aqua Jet. So it would have just saved a turn and his differential. And so he got rid of 2 of his hard hitters at this point, and he put quite a bit of damage on Steelix, which does not have any recovery outside of rest. But Steelix does get up the rocks, which is important for Volcarona, and even kind of Mega Aerodactyl. And unfortunately, unless Mega Aerodactyl gets Defog, which it might, I don't think he has it on his Aerodactyl. I could be wrong, so we won't go there. But removal is not the easiest option with the aggressive team that he had at the beginning of the match before he lost his 2 biggest attackers in Nidoking and Crawdaunt. But as you can see, Porygon 2 just hammers away at everything. With his 2 wall breakers gone, this thing just can eat up hits. So he's kind of just stalling him out. And then in comes the Volcarona, which was a bit dangerous. I understand that he's backed into a corner, so it was just unlucky. But Volcarona was able to finish the Steelix. Now he did go for the Swords Dance, which I thought was interesting. And then the Waterfall was a good move. Unfortunately, obviously, it just didn't come through with the damage. Maybe he needed to be adamant if he was Jolly. I'm not sure. Maybe that would have made the difference. But he does finally take it down with the Sylveon. And at this point, unless he has Psyshock, he can't win because of Volcarona. And Toxicroak wins with Poison Jab. So he should have just, after letting Porygon 2 go down, he should have just switched into Krogunk instead of letting Electros take another hit. So that's 2 differential, in my opinion, that didn't need to be lost. And at this point, he just finishes it with the Gunk Shot. So good match on both sides. I really like the Swords Dance Kabutops. I think I would have let the Mega Steelix or the Vileplume go down instead of the Nidoking. I'm not entirely sure why he went into Nidoking. I guess maybe thinking he wouldn't go for like a stab attack, like, I don't know, Giga Drain, which is why I thought he switched out, is because he was fearing the grass attack. But letting Nidoking go down like that was kind of hard, and I mean, the Mucks played really well. They had really good advantages once those two were down. So next, we'll go ahead and go to the match between the Alakazam Apparitions on the top and the New England Parasects on the bottom. So here, looks like it's maybe the same team. I'm not really sure. Looks like it though, from last week. And it looks like it might be the same on the top as well. So, you know, as far as predictability goes, both of them, if they watched last week's matches, will know kind of what to expect. Now, as far as builds go, we'll see this later in the match, but I'm just going to say this as far as, you know, in general, I've seen this happen across many matches, and I haven't really said it because it's not the biggest deal, but I do think that it's starting, now that the level of play is starting to get to a higher plane, that you need to be careful about just using like pre-made builds. So, you know, like going to Smogon and seeing the like top, you know, 1 to 3 different sets for certain Pokemon. Those are obviously good in blind battles, you know, like when you're laddering on the OU tier, UU, or whatever tier that you're playing in. But when you know what to expect of your other team and you know which Pokemon they do and do need, like they will and will probably not bring, or just the roster in general, like you know that they're bringing 6 of 12 Pokemon, that you should consider that and the moves you bring and who you'll think they'll switch in on your attacks. And I'll bring it up more specifically when an example shows up here in this match. But I like the Wigglytuff, the Slowbro, and the Infernape. And then I also really like the Mega Sceptile and the Weavile. I think between those two, and honestly, Reuniclus, really, I like the Apparitions team in this. I favor them a lot more. I feel like the Parasects were getting greedy. I understand like that they were just trying to do that because they weren't going to do very much to Heatran because it's Air Slash is resisted, all that. But, you know, going for the nasty plots, I think ended up, you know, it was just not worth it. He lost his Togekiss for no reason. He should have switched maybe to Slowbro or Infernape, because those would have been valid switches, but he got Rocks Up and lost, Heatran got Rocks Up, which was smart on the Alakazam side, and that ended up hurting him. However, I would like to point out, Ryan, if you're watching this, I'm sorry if you have taken my advice and it not worked out for you. So I guess just to clarify in general, but when, for example, I really like using Pokemon that can use Volt Switch and U-Turn, and to be able to kind of bounce back and forth and keep that Switch initiative in my favor. So I understand why he went for Volt Switch, because he didn't know what to expect. But first, Raichu has Lightning Rod, so he just absorbs it. So even though he doesn't have a ground type, he still has a way of absorbing your electric move. So that's what I would have personally done. Rather than letting it, you know, Wigglytuff take a huge hit, which I think was a bit interesting. But also, I would have just gone for Thunderbolt because, you know, you have Volt Absorb, so you don't have to worry about electric attacks from Raichu. So even if he does switch in, you go for that, you still have the offensive advantage. And you either force him out with a Volt Switch, or you go for something like Dark Pulse or whatever else you have as far as coverage goes. But I would have gone for Thunderbolt, and that would have ended the Wigglytuff here, in my opinion. And then you could have gone for Volt Switch or whatever. So my apologies if I've led you slightly astray, because normally Volt Switch is a good idea. But in this scenario, I would say that like there was no reason to. Usually you pivot expecting them to switch in something that you can't handle in 2 turns. And if you had gone for Thunderbolt, Volt Switch, or 2 Thunderbolts, that would have handled any Pokemon that he sent out except for Raichu. But, you know, you having an answer to it in your own Pokemon. So I do like what the Parasects do with the Wigglytuff here, which we saw last week, which was really cool. Unfortunately, it was a crit that probably mattered, but I don't know. And then he gets his own rocks up. Reuniclus starts to set up, and I think Jared realizes he can't let that happen, so he tries to go into his Mega Heracross and made a really good, and the Alakazam's made a really good play going for Psyshock just to take out the Wigglytuff or anything that tries to switch in, and he was able to knock out the Heracross, which would have taken him out next turn. So that was a really good play on his part. And then the Raichu comes in, and I'm not sure at this point. I mean, he went for Electro Ball, but I don't think really that's the most competitive move. Thunderbolt does more, and Volt Switch would have been a better option. So maybe he was Specs or something, I'm not sure. But yeah, I would have thought that Thunderbolt and Volt Switch would have been better than using Electro Ball. And then he would have gotten a little bit of chip damage rather than having to like hard switch out. But he goes into Slowbro, and the operations switch into their Thundurus, goes for the pivot. Now here he's forced to switch out, obviously. I would have stayed in, honestly, because he doesn't have hazard removal, which is the one thing I really didn't like about this matchup, is he didn't have a way to get rid of hazards, but two of his members are weak to them. And then, you know, so he should have just let it go down because it was at 25%. It was going to go down on the next switch in. And he wouldn't have risked the, you know, switch into Heatran to, I guess, sack it off or whatever. But, I mean, he still sacked it off the next turn because he couldn't outspeed. So I would have just let that happen. And then I would have gone into Reuniclus for the attack, gone for Psyshock or something. But, you know, that probably didn't matter in the long run, because Heatran ultimately wouldn't have stopped what happens in the end. So Infernape tries to do what damage it can, but the Reuniclus barely lives. He goes out into Slowbro and starts to set up as well. And here's where the match changed, and completely, like, Hugio barely had a chance to win at this point, because, and I think it was only because he had Focus Blast and Psyshock for his offensive moves, and I see no reason why he needs Focus Blast. Now I can go to the roster of the Parasects to see if there was anything that he might have expected the Parasects to bring that he brought that for. Let's see, New England Parasects. And I'm not seeing anything other than X-Cloud that would have potentially come to this match that would have been weak to Focus Blast. So and then everything else pretty much resists it or doesn't really care about it. So I wouldn't have thought that would have been a very good choice as far as attacks goes, because yeah, Focus Blast is strong, but it has a chance to miss, and Psyshock would probably do just as much to X-Cloud if that was why he brought it. So I would have honestly run Shadow Ball, because in this scenario he might have been able to win this stall war with Slowbro if he had something other than Focus Blast. And so he just continued to set up and let Slowbro continue to set up. And because he allowed that to happen, he wasn't going to win because he didn't have anything that hit for neutral damage or even super effective damage. So he switches here, and yeah, he does get the knockoff. And, you know, the knockoff does considerable damage and puts it in a vulnerable spot because of Scald. And then the final nail in the coffin, where maybe he had a chance to win. I'm going to just calc it just to see. I don't think it mattered, but I could be wrong. Slowbro, regular Slowbro, defensive. No, it's OU Calm Mind. +3. No, +4. yeah, +3, no. 1, 2, 3, 4. +4, that's what it is. Leaf Storm, 44%, had a small chance to win. Let's see, 44%. Yep, so it had a chance to Oko, so you could have switched and saved the Weavile for the final hit. Leaf Storm could have taken down the Slowbro even at this point, a small chance. But he goes for Rock Slide, I guess hoping for a flinch, thinking it wouldn't be enough for Leaf Storm, so maybe he just gave up at that point. But he had an actual chance to knock out the Slowbro here, but because he went for Rock Slide, which was, in my opinion, not the best move to go for, considering what was on the line, but also, like, you know, just it missing, it ended up the way it did, because I really think that the Alakazam should have won this match, but they let the Slowbro set up, which was good on the Parasect side, definitely, like being able to bring Calm Mind Slowbro and make it work, and you know, it was honestly, he was given too many opportunities to set up, and that's what caused it. So other than that, it didn't end in a forfeit technically, but either way, that is all for this match. So we'll go ahead and go on to the next match, which is between Because I'm Zubatman on the bottom and Feliday on the top. Now, I like the Mega Gyarados somewhat. Mega Pinsir definitely is a threat to it. Zapdos is really good in this matchup. What else? I'm still not comfortable in saying I like Breloom and Whimsicott being brought, especially in this matchup, because they just get wrecked by Mega Pinsir, and even kind of Zapdos as well, so I don't know. Ditto's also going to put in the work, as you'll see. So we'll go ahead and jump into the match. Now here, I still don't really get the Quick Attack. If you're going to run it as a Prankster, there's no reason to run Quick Attack. If you're just scouting, run Protect instead. But here, you know, that Volbeat took way too much damage. And butt stuff. The coil set on Zygarde is pretty neat. Luckily Zubatman didn't have, well, I mean, I guess it has a fairy on their team in Mawile, but it also is weak to Earthquake, so I don't know. I think that setting up that early was probably dangerous. Trying to do that and then not being able to deal with what they could switch in, I think that's kind of risky. And then bringing in the Mega Gyarados and getting a Toxic off on the Gourgeist was a good play. I still don't know how I feel about Gyarados, Mega Gyarados with Toxic, but maybe it's just a bulky set and it has that for coverage or something. I wouldn't have gone for Memento on so early as well, because he could just switch out and he's already lost. You know, now you've lost 2 Pokemon, and Skuntank, in my opinion, is still useful for things like Gourgeist, and honestly, maybe even using Sucker Punch on some of his other Pokemon. So, at this point, letting your Gyarados get burned, which was like your last, chance to stop the Mega Pinsir sweep, is ultimately what ended the match, because now Ditto just comes in, copies your stats, isn't burned, and just wins the, damage battle because it's burned and all that. So I would have not just let the Gyarados get burned and the Skuntank just giving it up with the Memento, especially on something like the Houndoom, which isn't the biggest threat compared to what else was on the team. Now, to be fair, Feliday didn't have the best time as far as what he had to face. He had to deal with a lot of things that were good against his team. But I mean, at this point, it's just a clean sweep. And yeah, so Justified coached his team well. Feladay unfortunately made a few misplays in the beginning, trying to set up too early and do some really interesting things a bit too early, in my opinion, like the memento. And it ended up setting it up for a sweep in the end by the Mega Pincer. So, other than that, we'll go ahead and go on to the next match between the Richmond Rykos and the Wiltshire Wobbuffets. Again, I don't really have a lot to say about this matchup. The Rykos have a really solid team, and they have answers to most of the threats that the Wobbuffets have. The only thing I can see really being a problem is Conch if it has Drain Punch and Ice Punch. It could be a problem because if it doesn't have Ice Punch, then Landorus just gets to wall it for days. So other than that, I mean, Latias, Landorus, and Volcanion just kind of stop everything that he wants to do. So we'll go ahead and jump into this. And as you can see, like even whatever that is, whether it was HP Ice or HP Dark, which I'm not sure if he gets Dark Pulse or not. Regardless, it was HP Ice, I'm guessing, and didn't do enough. The Surf just completely destroyed Magmortar. I wouldn't have guessed that it was a Surf, that it had Surf, so good play on the Rykos. And again, like I was saying, Landorus just completely walls this thing. So since he didn't obviously have Ice Punch, unless he was banded somehow, which I don't think he was, then that just, he can't do anything to the Landorus, and the only thing he can do now at this point is use Mega Blastoise to do that. But Volcanion just completely walls this thing, and even Aura Sphere wouldn't have done that much. I mean, it would have done decent damage unless it was Assault Vested, but this Blastoise can't really put in the work. Going for Thunder Wave was good. It secured the fact that his team would be outsped by Latias and maybe the Landorus if it's a faster set. I can't remember, but basically nullified the Mismagius. And here he's just kind of stuck trying to do something, but loses out there. And so, as you can see, he tries to set up here to do some damage, and I can see why he did that. Going for Earthquake was a good play because now he's in a really bad place to where he has to switch out. I would not have gone for, well, okay, knockoff. I bet it's Roost, Swords Dance, Earthquake, knockoff. But there I would have probably gone for another like knockoff or Earthquake because he went for a second Swords Dance and he got greedy and now he has to switch out. If he had gone for knockoff, the Latias would be gone, and that would be huge, huge, huge for the, what was it? Well, really, just his team in general, but especially Mega Blastoise. So, having to switch out there ultimately cost him because, Volcanion, whoa, hold on. Okay, so he goes for Aura Sphere here. Volcanion takes that like a champ. He goes for Scald. I didn't see that before. I'm not sure why he did that. Maybe he thought he would switch, but he just healed the Volcanion and lost his Blastoise. Yeah, that was a pretty big misplay. But, Landorus comes in, and yeah, he does lose the Landorus probably this time. But he gets his rocks up, I guess, to secure the fact that Shell Smash, Sash, Barbarical won't work, but that's okay. And then I think Serp just sweeps here. Yeah, so yeah, that Scald on the Volcanion was a big either misplay, whether it be because he didn't remember Water Absorb, or maybe it was, just like he was expecting him to switch or something. But, good on both sides, but I really feel like the Raikos had control most of that match. And like I said, I mean, Volcanion, Landorus, and Latias really kind of stopped the Wobbuffets team from getting any sort of momentum that they needed. So, good match. And we'll go ahead and go into the last match, which is between the Kentucky Krookodiles and the Charmeleonaires. So we got the Charmeleonaires on the bottom. I really like the Venusaur here. The problem with Venusaur and Mega Gardevoir, like that matchup, is that they both can do so much to each other that it's like hard to, like, it really just is who has to switch in on who. Or, you know, if Venusaur is already in, you can't switch in Gardevoir, but if Gardevoir is already in, you can't switch in Venusaur. And you can't just bring it in one-on-one it, because Psyshock does a lot, or Psychic does a lot, and it all just depends on the matchup of, like, if Psyshock is brought and it's a physically defensive set, you know, then it's not going to do very much. But if it's a specially defensive set and I bring Psyshock, it's going to do a decent amount, or, you know, vice versa with Psychic. The Rotom Wash, unfortunately, with Mind Games, gets double countered with the Volt Absorb on Jolteon and the Water Absorb on Vaporeon. The Aromatisse is a good option as far as more bulk goes. Hitmonlee, good with that Unburden if you can get that set up. And then the Sableye can really cause trouble if given the opportunity. And the Chandelure's, I think, the most important part of this team. I really think Cloyster should have been brought to this match, because that was the one thing, as the coach of the Krookodiles, that I was expecting and prepping for, because that was his best chance of winning. Not even Specs Shadow Ball one-shots the Gardevoir, so, and it wouldn't outspeed the Gardevoir at that point either, the way I was running it. So yeah, it was, it's got advantages on both sides, I'd say. I mean, the Honchkrow's good with the Sucker Punch. I mean, the only priority attacks that they have is Fake Out from Hitmonlee. But as far as other priority goes, the Sableye is a problem. But Sucker Punch from Honchkrow is really good in this matchup too. Brave Bird from Honchkrow, you know, and then the Moxie and all that. Plus the two sturdy Pokemon allowing revenging of any sort or setting up of any sort. Just having guaranteed moves completed is also an advantage, I'd say, on the Krookodile side. But without further ado, we'll go ahead and go into this match. Starts with Venusaur. I start with Skarmory. Now, I knew that I had the best play to just go for Brave Bird, because I wasn't sure if maybe he'd try to go for HP Fire, but he switched into Rotom, and he misses his Hydro Pump, which was unfortunate. And then I get in my Gardevoir in on the Aromatisse with a Volt Switch. And here, since I was running a subset, I knew that I should go Taunt first so you can't Wish Pass. But I went for Sub first, expecting something. And once that happened, I went for Taunt. I didn't realize this was a misplay on my part, that I didn't know what Aromaville did. And so, well, okay, we need to back up because this is where the magic happens. So I screwed up on Taunt. He gets a Wish Pass, and I'm expecting him to switch into something. I'm like, okay, well, he's not. If he goes into Venusaur, he could take a huge hit with Psyshock, you know, so he doesn't want to do that. If I go for Hyper Voice, Rotom, Sableye, and Hitmonlee are all dead. If I go for Hyper Voice and Chandelure comes in, it lives, and he told me afterward that it had Infiltrator, so it would have got a big hit in on the Gardevoir. Now, it wouldn't have killed because I calced it. It was Choice Scarf, and Modest Choice Scarf still doesn't do enough at the percentage I'm at. So it would have been really good, and I honestly would not have thought of that. I would have been surprised because I would have forgot about Infiltrator. So here I go for Psyshock because I knew that was my best play, and I end up getting a crit, which I think mattered. Let me, I didn't even calc that yet, so Mega Gardevoir, Modest, and then Chandelure, Choice Scarf. Yeah, that definitely mattered, unfortunately. But had that not taken him out, he would have gotten big damage in on me. And, oh man, I was mistaken. So, yeah. So if he would have gone for Shadow Ball and outsped, obviously, with the Scarf, Shadow Ball does have a chance of taking... Well, actually, it does take me out, I believe. Unless I'm not... I probably didn't put my bulk in correctly, but basically he would have outsped, and he would have taken out my Gardevoir, and yes, I could have come in with Honchkrow, but it would have been a different match. It wouldn't have been such a sweeping thing, and it would have been hard considering that was my answer for Venusaur, So, I mean, and I'd have other options, but still, that would have been tough. So yeah, unfortunately with the Psyshock, it does kind of just change the game completely. At this point, I just keep, I sweep, and unfortunately that's the match. I just take everything out because, yeah, he breaks the sub here, but unfortunately I outspeed everything that, could do anything, and so yeah, the match just kind of ends. So, a bit unfortunate, but I was banking on Cloyster coming, and I brought the sub knowing that he would want to bring something that would try to set up so I could take advantage of that. And so that was more than I anticipated successful-wise, but I also wasn't anticipating a crit, which happens sometimes. So it was a good game, a bunch of good games, some really good plays, some crucial misplays, but I'd say as far as across the board goes, a lot less misplays overall. And that's what I like. I like knowing that everybody is learning, and that they're, even if, because I mean, you saw I made a couple mistakes. I would have made a mistake in losing Gardevoir to Infiltrator Chandelure, because I wouldn't have expected that. I know I wouldn't have. I would have lost it right then and there, and that would have been huge. So, that would have been bad on my end. I also tried to taunt the Aromatisse, which doesn't work with Aromavale. And yeah, I mean, so it happens. But since it's happening less frequently across the board, that's a good thing. And that will be just something that changes over time with more practice, more experience, more battles under your belt. But across the board, I mean, still good matches. Everybody was playing at a higher level, and so you couldn't just like set up and sweep against anyone really. I mean, this match was a special case, obviously. There's just the reasons for losses in some cases are a lot more specific than they used to be, which means that like it's like harder to have matches like these end up the way they do, which I think is pretty cool. So, enough rambling. That's it for this week, guys, and I will see you all next week for week 7. So you all have a good rest of the week, and I will see you all next time. Thanks for watching, guys. If y'all enjoyed the video, go ahead and leave a like, and if you want, subscribe for more videos. Hope to see y'all in the future, and thank you for watching.